It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
.06 the time. It's a Tuesday. See, I'm getting stuck in this again. At least it's not Monday. You're done with that. I'm still working on it. I know. I'll get it.
Today's show is sponsored by Squid-Flavored Donuts, bringing the flavor of the ocean to your breakfast pastry.
Wow, and it's nice when it's like filled with squid in the middle. You know, like when you get one of those jelly-filled donuts. Oh, try it. It's great.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave, just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave.
There's a lot of things I can start on today because there's a lot of topics happening, not just in national news, but local news across Wyoming. We'll get to it. First, I wanted to play this for you. This is a woman who has, it looks like from the video I was watching, she has some kind of a salon going, and she's got quite a few young lady employees there. Now, being an older, more experienced woman, she wants to teach these young lady things, something. So she wants to teach them about taxes. Because if we really got rid of a lot of taxes, reduced the size of government and got rid of a lot of taxes, which, by the way, I will bring this up about the Wyoming Freedom Caucus and what they want to do with the size of Wyoming government. It's really going to surprise you, and I would be pleased with it. But let me just move on with taxes. These young people working for her, and there were about 6 young ladies that she was talking to, are at a stage in life where they just don't know. I'm not going to say they're stupid. They're just naive. They don't know. They could be getting so much more in their paycheck, and their boss could be making so much more money if it wasn't for the outrageous amount of taxes that businesses have to pay. The employees have to pay as well. So, for example, you get a paycheck. You take a look at your paycheck and how much is deducted from taxes. Yeah, imagine if you got your full paycheck, which you could if we went to a different type of taxation and got rid of the IRS. And that there's an idea out there where that could be done. But then how much for you employers out there, you know, you also have to pay taxes on that payroll. And that surprises a lot of people because when the employee gets a paycheck, taxes are deducted. When the employer pays those taxes, they also have to pay a tax on how much they're paying that employee. Can you believe that? All right. So how much is that? Well, this lady who owns a salon asked her employees a very simple question.
So we're going to take a guess. Who can guess within the last 3 years how much I have had to pay payroll taxes to just be able to pay you guys in the last 3 years?
I'm going to say 60,000. I think 80. Said 100,000.
$272,000 to the U.S. government just to pay people that you will also pay your taxes on as well. And then when you go to buy something, you will also be taxed on the item that you are purchasing. You're also, and then you get paid, and then your paycheck's half of that because you're also paying taxes. And then when you go to purchase something, you will be paying taxes.
So what she's trying to explain to them is this. So the boss, who could have made more money, but also could have paid more money to those employees, she has to pay taxes on the money she pays her employees. Then when the employees receive that money, they have to pay taxes on that same money. Then the employees take that money and they go purchase something, and their purchase is taxed. So that money that the employees are receiving, right there alone, and I know we can find more, but right there alone, that money was taxed 3 times. Now, these young ladies, and they all look to be early college age to me when I was looking at them. That's about the age that I figured that they would be, about early college age. These young ladies were absolutely shocked. You should have seen the expressions on their faces as they're, well, what? What? Okay. We can talk about a lot of different things here, but to me it comes down to just this. Vote for smaller government. There you go. Just vote for smaller government. That's all you have to do. Vote for smaller government. Now, the Wyoming Freedom Caucus has done a good job at making some headway in the Wyoming House and Senate. And they're pushing for a lot of things. There's a lot of that the Freedom Caucus does that I agree with. I'm not always happy with their tactics, but I agree with much of what they want to get done. One of the things is a bit shocking what extent they want to go to. Some members of the Freedom Caucus, according to Cowboy State Daily, have argued for as much as a 30% cut to the Wyoming state budget. Yeah, that really shocks me. You want to cut 30%? I actually, being more of the libertarian guy, I like that idea. Because as you've heard me argue many times, there's so many things that the government of Wyoming does that it shouldn't be doing. One of my pet peeves, as an example, is that professional shooting range, competitive shooting range that they want to build. Now, when I bring this up, a lot of times people will text me while I'm on the air or call the show and say, well, I already have a shooting range in my county. No, we're talking about a professional, Olympic-grade, competitive shooting range to bring in competitions from all over the world. Now, for Wyoming, I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's a great idea, in fact. But the idea that government should be paying, you, the taxpayers, should be paying that, no. And if they do this, and it looks like so far they're going to, about $10 million to start, $10 million to build this facility, which is not the role of government. Government should not be spending that kind of money and that kind of a thing. And there's many other projects like this that your state government is spending money on that it shouldn't be. Stuff that should just be up to the private sector. We can talk about local government, too. Now, if we get into the federal government, oh, dear God, the kind of money that they spend on so many ridiculous things. So every time somebody talks about raising taxes and expanding government programs, you can imagine how insane that drives me and should drive you as well. If you really want to help the middle class, as Democrats often say that they do, but even Republicans as well say they want to help the middle class. You really want to help the middle class, the way to do this is massively reduce the size of government. And then drastically, after we've paid down our federal debt, massively reduce taxes as well. But especially how complicated those taxes are. Because let's go back and think about what that lady just told her employees. She just said to them, and these young ladies were shocked, that as an employer, when I pay you, I have to pay taxes on what I'm paying you. Then you get your paycheck and you have to pay taxes on that. Then you go purchase something and you have to pay taxes on that. And I'm not even covering all of the taxes on that money during the course of, well, however long that person has that money. I mean, every time money moves in any way, or even if you just have it. So when Kamala Harris talks about taxing unrealized capital gains, she's talking about money that potentially could make money, but hasn't made money yet, but she wants to tax it already. Tuesday's slogan, Totally Trump Tuesday, says Wild Bill in Laramie. Okay, I'll put that in the bin of consideration. Morning, Wild Bill.
Why are you crying?
Because I don't want to be an adult.
You don't want to be an adult? I cry about that a lot, too. Why don't you want to be an adult?
Because it's not fun. It's going to be not fun. It's like a prison being an adult.
It is like a prison being an adult.
Come on, B. I don't want to be an adult. I don't even want to be a teenager. I just want to be a kid.
Me too. Can I be a kid?
No.
News and weather together at the top and bottom of every hour. This is Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on AM 1030 K2 Radio.
6:53 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Okay, so I am getting a lot of responses even this early in the morning. So I'm going to play it one more time and then bring this home to Wyoming because there's some things the Freedom Caucus wants to do. We can talk about the federal level too, but okay. Here is a woman who runs what looks like a salon. She's got several young ladies working for her, and she wants to explain to them how much that she has to pay in payroll taxes when she pays her employees. And then her employees have to pay taxes on that. And then when they go buy something, they have to pay taxes, and that's just the start of it.
So we're going to take a guess. Who can guess within the last 3 years how much I have had to pay payroll taxes to just be able to pay you guys in the last 3 years?
I'm going to say 60,000. I think 80. You said 100 though.
$272,000 to the U.S. government just to pay people that you will also pay your taxes on as well. And then when you go to buy something, you will also be...
You see how she's doing this, and then you're going to have to pay on that. And that's why I love it. I laugh every time I hear someone. I was watching a video from someone up in Canada, and he said, well, we have free health care. No, you don't. Go take a look at your paycheck. You do not have free health care. So the Wyoming Freedom Caucus is one group that, in part, some of them would like to see the size of Wyoming government reduced by about 30% for a lot of very good reasons, because of things that Wyoming spends money on that shouldn't be spending money on. And think about how much money businesses would be able to keep, because we don't have a state income tax, but how much money we would be able to keep if we were just doing less. And then let's take that to the federal government level. Okay, so Chet and Yoder. Now buy a set of tires, then look back at the taxes like internet or telephone. I think they tax the tax, and actually they do tax the tax. Jim says state should not be bankers, housing, insurance, entertainment. That's a lot of stuff. And give money to private organizations like the United Way, and we can go on, but it's a good start. And this is where I say I don't like it because a lot of local governments will want to give money to local charities so those local charities can help the community. And I'm all for helping the community, but let it come out of your pocket voluntarily, not out of a tax. I really do want to help these local charities. They do a better job than government ever will at taking care of our needy citizens. But again, I don't like where that money comes from when it's taken from you in form of taxes, and government's very inefficient with that money. Let's see, John up there in Gillette. Morning, John. And the government pension program put all new state employees on a 401k, which I agree with too. Government pension program that we have here, most states have it, and most states, their programs are running bankrupt. Even the state of Wyoming has had problems with our pension program. And I think part of the reason they have a pension program is they're trying to encourage bureaucrats basically to come work in the state of Wyoming and stay. And a lot of times Wyoming loses its bureaucrats to other states who are offering better deals. And one of the deals that are offered is a matching program for retirement. So, yeah, there's a pension program which the employee pays into a little bit, but the state matches it with even more. And that's what they're trying to do to attract employees. And I'm with John on this one. Just the people who already have it, that was the deal that was given to them. They already have it, so okay. But for any new employees that come along, no, you get a 401k like everybody else. In fact, your retirement is up to you as an employee, whether you work for the state or not. So, no, we don't do a pension program here in the state of Wyoming. Sorry, no. And when people say, but we're not going to attract those employees, well, they'll find some other way to attract them. But again, I'm a tightwad with the people's money. This is why, once again, when we take a look at the federal level, oh, dear God, what your federal government spends money on. That's why any time I hear any politician talk about borrowing more money or raising money through more taxation, even just let's close some tax loopholes. Well, closing tax loopholes is raising taxes. I mean, you have the loophole so you don't have to pay the tax, but now they're going to close the loophole that is a raise in your taxes. So the idea of how about you in government just quit spending all of this money? Now, I am firmly convinced we're never going to talk the current crop of politicians into doing the right thing. They are gone. They're done. We lost them a long time ago. Both parties, by the way. So instead, we need a whole new crop of people who understand what I just explained. But in order to do that, we have to get the American people to understand. That's why I'm glad that lady working at that salon explained this to her young employees. So hopefully they start to think, maybe I should be voting differently. Think about if every American began to realize, because most people don't, what actually happens to our money when it gets to the government level, on any level. But let's take a look at the federal government for a moment. They take so much money, they borrow and print so much money, and what actually happens with it? Yeah, and most of it lines the pockets of people in government, in bureaucracy, and those people on the outside who support them. People are getting rich off of tax money and borrowed money. And we're not getting much for it as the American people. Coming up on 6:30, local news coming your way after local news update on your weather forecast. You and I get back into it. 888-97 was the phone number, 888-97-WOODS. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
When you need to know quicker than the morning paper or the 5 o'clock news, you need Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Mornings on K2 Radio.
6:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Okay, so for those just joining us, I had played audio a couple of times of a lady explaining to her employees how much is paid in taxes. She has to pay taxes on the money she pays her employees. Then her employees pay taxes on that money. And then when they go purchase something, they pay more taxes, and on it goes. So we started talking about reducing government, even local government. And the Freedom Caucus in Wyoming some members would like to reduce the size of Wyoming government by about 30%, which I would be in favor of, being the tightwad with taxpayer monies that I am. And so that John up in Gillette brought up the pension here in the state of Wyoming, which I think can go away. To that, Jim responds, in general, government employees' benefits are so out of line with the private sector, it's no wonder taxes are where they are. Federal employees within a few years' experience can get up to 12 weeks paid vacation, and on. Yeah, I know, on it goes. You're right, Jim. On and on it goes with how much benefits they get. It used to be that if someone got a job as a government bureaucrat, everybody kind of felt sorry for him because it usually meant that the person was stupid. And I'm just being honest. And they couldn't get a real job. And a government job as a bureaucrat paid such crap money. I mean, it was really a horrible place to be. But if a person wasn't going to make it out in the real world, they would take a government bureaucrat job, but at least it was enough to survive on. Today, though, oh, dear Lord, the kind of money and benefits and so on, he's right. It far outpaces what the private sector does. Now, on that note, speaking of reducing, this is something I'm glad to see a local Wyoming government did. So Delta Airlines plans to pull out of Casper their flight to Salt Lake City. Story here, Cowboy State Daily says, the lone daily Delta Airlines flight from Casper to Salt Lake City via SkyWest is counting down to its final trip for December 3rd in the middle of a busy holiday travel season. Delta Airlines website shows an afternoon flight available to Salt Lake City on December 3rd, but none December 4th. Okay, and that is in large part, because the city of Casper has just decided no longer will they be paying the $1.3 million minimum revenue guarantee to SkyWest. So we've talked about this before. I understand that some people in Wyoming want airline service in their local community. I certainly enjoy it too. In fact, every single year, I've told you about this before, the week after Thanksgiving, is when I go visit my family, because ticket prices are stupid low. Not just low, stupid low, because airplanes are empty after the holiday rush, and that's the perfect time to get really ridiculously low prices and go visit family, which is what I do. Right? So to subsidize the rest of it, it's a guarantee to the airlines to bring flights into different Wyoming communities, because we don't have a lot of people riding the airlines. Usually you go down to either you go to Salt Lake City or you go to Denver to get on a plane and go somewhere else. And I like the convenience of that. I certainly do. But I don't like the idea that, well, we have to make sure that the airlines are making enough money, and they want, in this case, $1.3 million a year to go to Salt Lake City and back with a daily flight. And I looked at that and thought, well, if that's what it takes, then never mind. If you can't fill those seats, then let it go away. And for communities that would worry, but wouldn't we run out of air travel altogether? What if we had no airlines? Well, if you don't have the people to support the airline, then you don't get an airline. But again, that's the capitalist in me. You've got the community to support it, or you don't. And the other side likes to argue that, yeah, but if we pay this out, then you see the benefit to the community. And the answer to me is not really no. I don't. I don't think you're making enough off of it to the community, although it is convenient. I understand. But no, we got to find a different way to do this than what we're doing right now, especially not on the backs of the taxpayers. Avocados in Laramie. Do you think Vermin Supreme is prepared to take on the deep state? Oh, yes, I do. And I do think Vermin Supreme is possibly about the best person that we could get to be president of the United States. I mean, think about it. If we survive Biden and Harris was there as well, I mean, this has been horrible. We've had, as Americans, we picked some really horrible presidents and senators and other, governors and so on. We're just really bad at electing people. Considering the horrible people that we have elected as American citizens, I think Vermin Supreme would be a whole lot better than what we've had. I mean, we certainly can't get any worse. We might as well just go out all out insane and stupid. And if you haven't heard of this guy, he's this guy who runs every single year. He wants to make sure everybody has like a kitten or something like that. He wears a rubber boot as a hat on his head. I mean, he just sounds perfect to me.
Live and local all across Wyoming. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Join in at 888-97-WOODS or the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app.
6:48 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming, so off we go to the icebox where Frank Gambino is waiting by. Frank, I'm going to fill your brain with a bunch of useless facts today.
More?
Okay? Yeah, oh, sure.
How do you find all this?
Oh, because I spend a lot of time looking for useless factoids. Okay. I mean, look, I fill my brain with all sorts of stuff that's really annoying.
Yeah. And then you have to release it.
Yes, I do. So what I do is I put in useless facts, which push out the useful facts. It makes me feel better.
Okay.
Okay, penguins, when they're swimming in the water and they jump out of the water, we're going really fast and they shoot up out of the water to get up on the ice.
Yeah.
They can do that as high as 6 feet in the air.
Wow.
That's pretty good,
Boy, those penguins got hops.
Yes. Now, this one I think you probably already know. Millions of trees are accidentally planted by squirrels that bury their nuts and forget where they hit them.
No.
Yeah. They don't have a map. They bury them, go, I'll get back to you and I'll eat that nut later, and then they just have no idea where they go.
And then a tree grows.
Yes. Okay.
All right, squirrels.
You see a fly in your house?
Yeah.
It's going to live for about 2 months. That's it. It's dead.
Okay.
Okay. Which means if you found a lot of flies in your house and then one day they were gone, chances are you just have dead flies all over the place. You didn't know about it. Yeah. Okay. The only number whose letters are in alphabetical order is 40.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If you spell 40, that's in alphabetical order.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, this is one that's always kind of boggled my mind, but it's true. The brain is the only organ in your body which named itself.
The brain named itself the brain?
Yes.
Oh. Because someone with a brain
yes.
said, okay, this in your
We're
head
gonna
is
call
a
it brain. Yeah. So it named itself.
Okay.
All right. So there's this tree, and you've probably seen this. It's got a really wide trunk that tapers off, and it doesn't have branches to get to the very top.
Yeah.
And it's called bamboo? Bab tree or something like that. Really unusual looking, prehistoric tree, really, but it's still alive. It will store, and it's in a desert area. It lives in desert areas, but it will store about 32,000 gallons of water in their
Gallons?
trunk. Gallons.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot. There are some rocks. I'll leave you with this one for this segment. There are some rocks that will float on water.
No.
Pumice stone is a volcanic rock.
That floats.
And if you put it in water, it will actually float. Now, that one's going to keep you up at night, I'm sure.
A lot of things do. All right, in college athletics, the scene is changing again with the Mountain West Conference losing teams left and right, and reports indicate that Utah State will be leaving the Mountain West to join the Pac-12 after Colorado State, Boise State, Fresno State, and San Diego State jump ship. Now, those schools will start playing the Pac-12 in 2026, and the Pac-12 evidently did offer UNLV to join, but the Rebels elected to remain in the Mountain West Conference, and the Air Force, which has been courted by the American Athletic Conference, elected to remain in the Mountain West. So the Pac-12 has 7 schools and need 8 to be a conference, and at this point, the Mountain West Conference, by 2026 or after these departures, will be down to 7, but they have plenty of time to get an 8th. Utah State in football has been formidable. They won the Mountain West Championship back in 2021, and their men's basketball program has been to the NCAA tournament 4 of the last 5 years. Over in college football, the Wyoming Cowboys will host the Air Force in the Mountain West Conference opener on Saturday night in Laramie. The Pokes are one of the worst teams in the country, which is unfortunate to say, but they are. They're 0-4 after a 44-17 loss to North Texas last week, and all they can really do now is just wipe the slate clean for the non-conference portion of their schedule, and then maybe once league play starts, turn out to be the team that people thought they would be, or stumble through the rest of the season. UW 6.5-point underdogs in that game, and it's a 6 p.m. start from Laramie on Saturday. We'll have that for you on K2 Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. In the NFL from last night, there were 2 games. Buffalo drilled Miami 47-10. Former Wyoming Cowboy quarterback Josh Allen threw 4 touchdown passes in the first half, and he was really sharp in the first half. Bills are now 3-0. In the other game, Washington beat Cincinnati 38-33. Casper native and former UW star Logan Wilson with 9 tackles for the Bengals for the middle linebacker spot, and the Bengals have woefully underperformed. They sit at 0-3. Major League Baseball, longtime Colorado Rockies star Charlie Blackmon will retire at the end of the season. Blackmon is one of the best players the Rockies have ever had. He played all 14 years of his career in Colorado, a 4-time All-Star, and led the National League in hitting back in 2017, hitting .331. He is a career .292 hitter and played in over 1,600 games in his career with the Rockies. And that's it in sports.
Okay. So I'm looking now for a local team, and I'm talking like, Denver and Wyoming and so on, that we can say is really doing well, because you spent the entire summer talking about Colorado baseball. Just sucking.
We'll have to wait for basketball and hockey.
Basketball, okay. Colorado football, you didn't, even though they won one, you were not really.
No, not really.
Not really.
Okay. And especially with like UW's football fortunes, everyone's going, when does basketball start?
So okay. So then, do you think that the UW basketball team
they might surprise? They have a new coach at Sundance Wicks, so there's going to be some new energy there. Yeah. Other than that, we're just kind of living in this world where like, all right, is anybody going to be decent here?
What did you say that guy's name was?
Sundance Wicks. He's from Gillette, Wyoming.
I like his name.
Yeah.
He's got to be a winner with a name like that.
And he was a winner. He was a great high school athlete, track, basketball, coach, the whole 9 years. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank. Coming up on some... I like that name. Coming up on some local business, we got to take care. We're going to roll into news time after that national local update on the weather forecast. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Six at the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It is a Tuesday, which is not a Monday, so it almost doesn't suck.
Today's show is sponsored by squid-flavored donuts, bringing the flavor of the ocean to your breakfast pastry.
Now, you can get a donut that's just squid-flavored, or you can get that filling in the donut, which is a lot like when you have a jelly-filled donut, but it's squid in there. I mean, it's just, give it a try. don't tell me what happens to you afterwards. I don't want to know. Okay, so before I get to the real story that I have lined up for you here, I just came across this. There are interesting little coins that you can buy for all sorts of things. I mean, minted coins, they don't have any real value. It's just something that is a coin shape. And I see a lot of people do this for different charities, businesses. Even when you go to a VFW hall and so on, they have coins for all sorts of different things that people can get made. And there's even for those fans, which I am, of the novel Atlas Shrugged, you want a copper coin? Yeah, well, there's all sorts of different coins that go with the book. You know what the copper coin is if you're a fan of the book, but it depends on what you want to get. Here's one that I think we should use to replace U.S. currency. On the front of it, it has an anvil being struck by a hammer. On the back of it, and this looks like it's just a dull metal-looking coin. No great color to it. Except on the back, there is a dumpster. And the fire is actually in yellow on this dull-colored metal coin. It's the dumpster fire coin, which I think should be the United States of America's new currency. When the dollar finally crashes, and at the rate our government's going, at some point it's going to, then let's go ahead with the dumpster fire coin, because I think it just represents what our government is. So the front part, which is the anvil and the hammer, strongest steel is forged in the fire of the dumpster. And then you flip it over to the back. And again, it says the strongest steel is forged in the fire of the dumpster. It's the dumpster fire coin. I think when the dollar finally crashes, this is what we use from now on as an actual coin, which, again, expresses everything about our federal government that we need to know. All right, moving on to the actual topic that I had. Let's talk about voter rolls, because we're coming close to election time here. It's not that far away. It's really amazing to me how fast this is coming. But all right. The story that I have in front of me says non-citizens have been added to several states' voter rolls, largely through the motor vehicle department, sometimes even after they have explained they are not U.S. citizens. There are several states out there that have, if you get a driver's license, you're automatically registered to vote because you got a driver's license. Then they allow illegal immigrants to get a driver's license, which puts them automatically on the voter rolls. States have been, the story says, discovering non-citizens on their voter rolls for many years, with many being added through the motor voter process at motor vehicle departments that began with the National Voter Registration Act in 1993. If non-citizens are seeking to become naturalized citizens, they begin illegally registering to vote. And right now there's not a process in those areas to prevent that from occurring at all. So an election integrity group has examined states' voter rolls for years, the story says, finding that non-citizens who are illegally registered to vote across the country are many still on the rolls. J. Christian Adams, we're going to Pennsylvania for this part of the story, president of the Public Interest Legal Foundation, said in a special report with the organization here is called Just the News, that they're airing on Tuesday that non-citizens had been registered to vote in Pennsylvania for decades. He said Pennsylvania had been registering non-citizens by admission. This really wasn't some conspiracy or, they just were on the rolls because of the motor voter roll. Now, what I want to know is how many people actually did go to vote. He explained in oral arguments earlier this month before the Third Circuit Federal Court of Appeals in Philadelphia, defending really any kind of election outcome that had, or even arguing against election outcome that had illegals on the voter rolls. Pennsylvania needs to cough up the records, he said, because people really don't know in Pennsylvania how many illegals are on the voter rolls. Now, some states just recently have discovered how many and are doing something to get them off the rolls. Some states. Other states don't even know how many are on the rolls. In 2017, Pennsylvania Secretary of State, a Republican who was a Philadelphia city commissioner at the time, told a Pennsylvania Senate committee that there were about 100,000 matches of voter registration records to state driver's license numbers with Immigration and Naturalization Service indicators. Now, that was back in 2017. So what do you think it might be today? The matches don't mean, the story says, that all those people voted. We're not talking about a significant number here. We're talking about potential, he says. And so maybe out of hundreds of thousands, maybe 10,000 might have voted. But that's an estimate. The Pennsylvania Department of State announced in September, again back in 2017, records indicate some 1,160 non-citizens have requested their voter registrations be canceled. That's not many. Meanwhile, in California, the same organization filed a lawsuit against the Alameda County Register of Voters for illegally violating, not only disclosing records, because these records are supposed to be disclosed, and they're not doing it. Non-citizens have been placed on voter rolls through motor voter departments by lying about their citizenship. Quote, we've collected over the years, in some places to get a driver's license, you have to prove that you're a citizen. So they just lie about it. And they get the driver's license. Now they're registered to vote. Quote, we've been collecting over the years data to show how non-citizens get in, and it's largely by not telling the truth in the motor voter process. Again, quote, most of the people who actually get registered to vote, according to the data we've collected, are actually legal residents, like 90% of them and 95%. But then there's those people who get through the system. Now, we're talking about still when you take a look at all the numbers, a small percentage, but a percentage nonetheless. However, sometimes non-citizens still get on states' voter rolls despite explaining their citizenship status. So in other words, here's someone who's not a citizen. They're looking for... Now, just because I say non-citizen, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're here illegally. Because there are people who are here legally, let's say on a worker's visa, as an example. And that's okay that they are. We allow that. So they get a driver's license, which is fine. They're here legally. They're working here. They get a driver's license, and they explain, I'm not a citizen. I'm here on a work visa. But because they have a motor voter rule, they just automatically get put on the register to vote. Now, do they? Again, not everybody does. Yet, still, the pathway is available there. So, quote, we have hundreds that were actually marked on the form not a citizen, and yet again, still registered to vote. So you can see there's a lot to clean up here. Thousands of non-citizen voters have been discovered on voter rolls in Alabama, Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Louisiana, North Dakota, Ohio. All have been included in the language of the state's constitution prohibiting non-citizens from voting. Meanwhile, Idaho, Iowa, Kentucky, Missouri, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Wisconsin all have ballot measures for voters to decide on November's general election whether non-citizens should be prohibited from voting in elections. And my answer to that, of course, is, well, of course they should be. They're not citizens. I mean, nothing against them. There are those people, again, who are still here legally. They're just not citizens, but they came here legally to work or for whatever other reason, but they shouldn't be allowed to vote because they're not citizens.
If I manage to make it through this week, I would like my straitjacket to be black leather and my helmet to sparkle. Thank you.
Local and mobile across Wyoming and beyond with the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. This is AM 1030 K2 Radio.
Beautiful morning out there. 7:21 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name's Glenn Wood. By the way, some of the people that I talk to, just so you know, with the Wake Up Wyoming app, you can text me while I'm on the air. So you just download the Wake Up Wyoming app at your app store. It's that easy. And then you'll see the chat option on the toolbar. Hit chat, send me a text message, and I answer back both on and off the air. I'm talking with people during the entire show off of the app. So, all right, let's take a look at, I'm not big on polls. polls are garbage. And I don't care who they say is ahead in the race, and even if it's what you want to hear. And for those Trump supporters, if Trump were way ahead, I would say don't trust it. And it shows him a little bit behind right now, and I would say don't trust it. It has nothing to do with what's going to happen on Election Day. And if you've been around long enough, you've experienced that. I mean, there's even polls that have been done the day, not just the day before the election, but they do exit polls on Election Day. And the exit polls still get it wrong. So what's the point in them, right? Sometimes there are some polls which actually come pretty close to predicting things, but it doesn't often happen in my experience, all right? So the story I have in front of me says one of the most striking things about following this campaign is the fact that election projections are all over the place. This author says, I was chatting with a political science professor and friend of his, and he was projecting a 1980 Reagan-style victory for Trump. As an assessment, I tend to agree with him, says the author, while the online analysis shows a dead heat and even a slight lead for Kamala Harris. Well, Nate Silver, who has been more of a Trump bullish kind of guy, projection shows a very slight advantage for Harris. So the answer, of course, comes down to the polls and what you take away from them. Most of the polls show Harris with a very modest lead within the margin of error, although one doesn't match the Biden's 2020 poll numbers. That in itself should make you a bit skittish about believing that these polls are favorable to Harris. If Trump's numbers are better than today than he was in 2020, and Harris was doing worse with different minority groups, Hispanics especially, does that make a whole lot of sense? Because when it comes to minority groups and even unions, Harris is not doing as well. And those typically are the strong points for Democrats. So this author says one explanation is simple. Pollsters use models, and models are by their nature almost always wrong. They are guesses about what the electorate will look like. Because remember, when they take a poll, it's a small sample. It's not like they're polling millions of people. They'll poll hundreds, maybe 1,000 at best, but usually they're polling hundreds of people. And based on that, they project what the voters themselves will do across the nation. So they don't know what the electorates are going to look like, and they keep trying to correct for all of their errors. The story says this leads sometimes to massive errors. Assuming that pollsters aren't massaging the numbers themselves, you can make a judgment about that. You call it the way you want to. So how many Republicans will vote? How many Democrats will vote? Okay. How many people are out there that will vote that have not voted before? There are a lot of people who are the moderates, or as we call them, the low information voters, who really never pay attention to anything until the last minute. Those are the ones who can't make up their minds. This author says it's black magic, not science. Some pollsters are better than others, but since every election is different, you can't just use a previous electorate model to take a look at what's going to happen with the electorate this time out. Then you have the non-response bias. Can you get a random sample if people who answer the polls are not randomly selected? Obviously not. And since there are indicators that some people, Democrats mostly, are more likely to answer pollsters than Republicans. Here's the thing. Republicans don't like doing polls. And so that'll skew the numbers. Plus, there are news organizations out there who want to tell you what they think you should be hearing. The story says there are numbers of variabilities, like influence poll. Oh, let me give you a local answer to that. So against John Barrasso, we had a candidate running who in the polls, he kept saying the polls are showing me in a dead heat or beating John Barrasso. And he was really convinced that he had Barrasso this time around, according to the polls. Well, the polls were completely wrong, and Barrasso just trumped him. Just buried him in the actual election, which, of course, we're not. in the general election, but this is in the primaries, and this guy just lost big time in the primaries. The polls were all completely wrong. Now, this story gets into breaking down a lot more. I mean, really breaking things down. But the point I'm making when I'm going through all of this, and I can just go ahead and put the story away now, just tell you my point in all of this, is as we get closer to election time, and of course it's something that on-air personalities need to talk about, from radio talk show hosts to television newscasters. Even when you open up a story online and read about the elections, it's the polls say, the polls say, the polls say, the polls say. And there's even some radio talk show hosts out there that I like, but I can't listen to them when they're on about, well, the polls show, the polls show, the polls show. Well, the polls are garbage. They take minute, tiny little samples. I've had a few times in my life, pollsters actually call my home. Back, when we used to have the telephone on the wall, or so, it was actually a landline. And I've had a couple of times pollsters called, and I would stop them in the middle of their polling questions and say, you're asking me some really leading questions here. You're not going to get a good result because you're asking questions that lead me to a certain conclusion. And a lot of times they would ask a question and say, is it A, B, or C? Do you think that A, B, or C? And I would say D. Can I put a right-in answer? Because my answer is not on your list. So as we get closer to election time, don't worry about what the polls say. That doesn't have anything to do with what's actually going to happen out there. And a lot of the political pundits is on television, as you've seen them. It's a lot like for you sports fans out there. When you watch a pregame show and they're sitting around making predictions about what's going to happen. Now, how often are they actually right about that? Yeah. And yet still they'll bite, even when they talk about the stock market, things like that, how often are they actually right? All right. So don't worry about that. Just make sure that people get out and vote, especially the way you want them to vote, and you'll get the results you want. Maybe. Coming up on 7:30, local news coming your way after local news update on the weather forecast, and you and I get back into it again. And the phones, of course, 888-97-WOODS, 888-97-WOODS. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on AM 1030 K2 Radio. Join the show at 888-97-WOODS.
7:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Okay, so real quick, I got to answer Dan and Douglas because that's funny, Dan. But if I'm going to be real with you, not entirely true. But I always like it when people use that joke. I was talking about polls and how when it comes to taking polls, most conservatives just don't even get involved. Pollster approaches them, they say, I don't want to get that. And they don't. And so they can be underrepresented, but also underrepresented because a lot of pollsters don't sample as many conservatives anyway. So Dan says, folks for Trump don't have time to take polls because they have jobs, which is funny. But the reality is there's a lot of liberals out there that are, not only do they have jobs, they're very successful people. And yet they will make sure to take the poll because they're activists. And they want to be heard. So they make sure to take those polls. All right. Completely different story. Oh, 7:45, I got Don Day on. Don Day is going to explain your weather forecast for the next few days, which is really pleasant. Just a spoiler alert there. All right. So let's go back to Teton Pass here in Wyoming. During the course of the summer, actually it was in the spring, that one of those hairpin turns collapsed. And so that closed down a major pass, which, remember what I was saying about the media at the time? There was news outlets, even from not just within Wyoming, but outside of Wyoming, that came to cover the story. And the first thing they did, being news outlets, they took a look at the tourist industry, because that's an important pass that comes from Idaho into Wyoming through the Tetons. And it cuts a lot of time off. So right away, news organizations started talking about how much tourist money comes in to Jackson, for example, and this will do irreparable harm. which, of course, it didn't do any harm whatsoever, while the pass was closed and under repair with a temporary turn being built. Anybody who wanted to go to Jackson and up to Yellowstone through there just went around. It took them longer, but they went around. So financial damage done to Jackson Hole, 0. Then reporters started talking about what kind of damage it was going to do to employees, because a lot of employees can't afford to live in Jackson, most of them. So they go to their apartments in Idaho and then drive back to work every single day. And so it talked about the irreparable harm that was going to be done to Jackson has money, in case you hadn't noticed. And so they got some buses together so they could bus their employees back and forth. And many of them took advantage of it. And so, yeah, it was a long trip to get to work and back, a long trip. But that's okay. The employees did it, and everything was just fine. So now, and of course, there had to be that article written up and it was Wyoming Public Media that did it. Well, the pass collapsed because of climate change. And we're going to see more collapses like this because of climate change, which is garbage, too. Well, they've been working on the pass for quite a while and working on, again, there's that temporary turn there that they have going. But they want to put back the original wider turn, which would be safer. That's probably not going to be done until next summer. Now, I've been tracking this. There's some people I follow online who they're into geeky stuff like this because they're engineers, and road engineers specifically. And so they've been watching WYDOT's progress, and a lot of money has been put into this. And they have a long way to go. And, of course, wintertime is going to slow them down. These guys have been working 7 days a week to get this pass done. And a lot of work has been done on not just building out what collapsed, but making sure that it stays once it is rebuilt out. And there's loads of material to pull from. I mean, you're in a mountain area. They got loads of material to pull from. They'll do just fine. But the timeline, they really were hoping to have it done by this winter, but they're probably going to have it done by next summer. And that's okay because the temporary pass is working just fine. It does slow down traffic a lot as people come through the area and make that hairpin turn. It's even now more of a hairpin turn because they just tightened up the turn, by quite a bit. And so people really have to slow down now in order to go through that turn there. Now, is that really causing any traffic jams or anything like that? No. And it's been working just fine. And so the pass has been open. I've got to give it to WYDOT. They got a temporary solution up and running really fast when you consider how fast they got it up and running. And all of the news reports that you heard out there about how harmful that was going to be to Jackson Hole, how harmful that was going to be to Wyoming, were just absolute garbage as usual. Remember what I've said about news media? I've been saying this since I was on my high school newspaper. I made it up myself. I'm proud of it. News media does not report news. They report controversy and hype. And when they cannot find it, they will create it. And in this case, that's exactly what they did. Just decided to hype up something. It was already bad enough. Thankfully nobody was hurt when that turn collapsed. I'm glad to see that nobody was hurt. But really, you didn't have to make it sound like it was a disaster. And to blame climate change?
You know how people are using pronouns these days like she, him, her, them, theirs? I want you to start using adjectives when you address me, like spectacular, outstanding, phenomenal, audacious.
Take Glenn anywhere with the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on AM 1030 K2 Radio.
7:45 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. So after having just all sorts of adventure and fun with an international balloon race, and he's in other countries and so on, Don Day is back in Wyoming, where the weather is pleasantly boring. Sorry, Don.
I don't even know why I got up this morning.
But still, you could have just literally phoned in. We could have pre-recorded this on Monday, and I could run it all week.
Well, is the record button going right now?
I'll do that for you, yeah. No,
because there's really nothing's going to change. We're going to be under this. We like to call this in the weather business severe clear.
Yeah.
It's so clear, it's severe.
So that means at least it doesn't look like there's going to be a whole lot of wind, which is good for the fires out there. I mean, a little breezy now and then. And
we'll have a little breeze.
Okay. And temperatures are not hot, but I would say just maybe a tad above average?
Yeah, this will be especially true here at the end of the week. Today's temperatures will be about where they should be. Tomorrow into Thursday and Friday, they'll be up a bit. Many areas will get well up into the 80s. But this is the time of year. The difference between your high and the low could be 40 degrees or more. Mm-hmm. So, 80s and 40s. So that makes for some very nice mornings and evenings. Bit warm during the day, but with the very low humidity that we have out there, as we like to say, it's a dry heat.
Now, for those people who are aurora watchers, it's a crapshoot, I know, but because the skies are so clear at night, this might be a good time.
Yeah, there's a geomagnetic storm predicted for the 25th, which means tonight or tomorrow night, we may see the aurora, we may not. It's a G1, so that's the lower end of a geomagnetic storm. But, was it about a week, 10 days ago? We had a pretty good aurora showing, that exceeded expectations. So the sun is still staying very active. So there may be that opportunity with these clear skies the next couple of nights to maybe get a view of them.
Yeah. Now, on another note, for those people who love fall colors, I would say head up high right about now. Snowy Range, Bighorns, places like that. It's just starting to really turn up there. It's nice. The higher elevations are what's happening now.
Well, yeah, and this traditionally, the last week of September, the first week of October, depending on elevation, is the best time. And what we haven't had yet is, while we've had a couple of episodes of snow in Wyoming's high country, we haven't had those big snow events that take the leaves off. So the backdrop of the blue skies and the changing fall colors should be remarkable this weekend. And a real opportunity, I think probably the best opportunity coming up.
Is it better for the leaves in the color if it's drier or wetter?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'll have to look that up.
You need to get a botanist on the horn for that.
I'll get back to you on that one tomorrow so we have something to talk about because the weather's going to be the same.
Please do. Find something.
Thank you, Don. Don Day with day weather. Yeah, you can tell Don's getting just a little bit bored there because it's just going to stay nice for a while. I think. So if we go to the icebox, Frank Gambino is waiting by. Okay, Frank, back to useless information jammed into your ear.
Well, useless information, was it dry or wet for leaf color?
Yeah. That's all I had. He had nothing to talk about. What am I going to do?
You know what? Just skip him tomorrow.
Yes, okay. Don had weather.
Yeah.
Yep, whatever. Okay, so there is something called rap rage. This is an actual condition when you feel extreme levels of anger because you're trying to unwrap something you just bought at the store. You know, that hard packaging?
Oh, yeah, where you need like 5 tools.
Yeah. My favorite one is when they have that package to open. You need a pair of scissors, but you bought a pair of scissors, so that's what you're trying to get at?
Oh, a pair of scissors to open up a thing for a pair of scissors.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I'll buy that one. That's true.
Okay. 1/4 of the bones. 1/4 of the bones in your body are in your feet.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah. That wonderful smell of old books comes from the breakdown of 2 chemical compounds in the paper.
I've heard that too. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I love that smell. Let's see. That's okay. Veins, which can be seen in the thickness of a leaf, in their functionality are similar to blood vessels in your body, delivering water and minerals. So you're basically looking at blood vessels. Now, here's one that I really like. There's a guy who's holding up a disc. So picture like a CD, back when we had CDs in our computers. Mm-hmm. Okay, but make this one about the size of the tire on your car.
Oh, okay.
And it was the first one ever invented. It was 10 megabytes.
And it was about as big as a manhole cover?
Yes.
Ooh.
That was 1960 it was invented. Something that big, and all it could hold was 10 megabytes. Now, I have a terabyte driver in my studio here for storing data.
Yeah.
And I can fit it in the palm of my hand.
There's technology for you.
It's going to get smaller.
Isn't that amazing? It just is. College athletics, the scene changing again with the Mountain West Conference losing teams left and right. And now reports indicate that Utah State will be leaving to join the Pac-12 after Colorado State, Boise State, Fresno State, and San Diego State jump ship. Those schools will start play in the Pac-12 in 2026. The Pac-12 apparently did offer UNLV to join, but the Rebel program elected to remain in the Mountain West Conference. And the Air Force, who has been courted by the American Athletic Conference, elected to remain in the Mountain West. So the Pac-12 has 7 schools that need 8 to be a conference, and at this point, the Mountain West, by 2026, will have 7, but they have plenty of time to add an 8th or more. Now, Utah State in football has been formidable, winning the Mountain West Championship back in 2021, and their men's basketball program has been to the NCAA tournament for the last 5 years. In college football, the Wyoming Cowboys will host the Air Force in their Mountain West Conference opener on Saturday night in Larry. The Pokes, one of the worst teams in the country at 0-4 after a 44-17 loss to North Texas last week, and that's really unfortunate to say, but really all they can do now is just wipe the slate clean from the non-conference portion of their schedule, and then once league play starts on Saturday, turn out to be the team that people thought they would, or stumble through the rest of the season. UW is 6.5-point underdogs. That's a 6 p.m. start from Laramie on Saturday. We'll have that for you on K2 Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. NFL from last night, there were 2 games. Buffalo drilled Miami 47-10 as former Wyoming Cowboy quarterback Josh Allen threw 4 touchdown passes in the first half. He was absolutely sharp in that first half of play, and the Bills are now 3-0. In the other game yesterday, Washington beat Cincinnati 38-33. Casper native and former UW star Logan Wilson with 9 tackles for the Bengals from the middle linebacker spot, but the Bengals have woefully underperformed. They sit at 0-3. Major League Baseball, longtime Colorado Rockies star Charlie Blackmon will retire at the end of this season. Blackmon is one of the best players the Rockies have ever had, and he played all 14 years of his career in Colorado. A 4-time All-Star and led the National League in hitting back in 2017. He is a career .292 hitter and played in over 1,600 games with the Rockies. That's it in sports.
Josh Allen's off to a good start this year.
He was fantastic in that first half. He could do no wrong.
Okay.
I think it was just in the first half, he was 22 of 28 for 247 yards. He was terrific. Absolutely terrific. Now, that being said, the Bills' whole deal is that you can play great in the regular season. How do you play in the playoffs? Especially when it gets down if you've already won a playoff game and now you're maybe 1 game away from the Super Bowl. There's your deal.
So did they have that problem last year?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
And the year before that.
All right.
And the year before that.
Don't choke near the end.
No, right. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Frank. Coming up on some local business we got to take. I'll roll into news time after that. National local update on the weather forecast. You and I get back into it again. And we will get into open phones, which I give you every weekday at some point, not just on Fridays. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. You can talk about what I'm talking about. Change the subject. Fine. I'll just kind of roll with it. The time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It is a Tuesday, which doesn't suck as much as Monday.
Today's show is sponsored by Squid-flavored donuts, bringing the flavor of the ocean to your breakfast pastry.
Personally, I like it when it's squid-filled, like a jelly donut is. It works better for me. Open phones, the most dangerous time of the day, every day on this program.
Warning. Wake Up Wyoming is about to enter daily open phones. This means that anyone will be allowed to call in and talk about anything. I mean, imagine if we actually allowed you on air to say anything you wanted. Scary, right? Well, we're just that brand of crazy. If you are offended by what other people think, then maybe you want to tune out right about now. Just saying. If you should choose to call, just remember, the more funny and interesting you are, the longer Glenn will keep you on the line. Obnoxious jerks will be hung up on. Dave, all right, strap in, and let's do this thing.
888-97 Woods, the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. Or you can do what a lot of other people do. Use your Wake Up Wyoming app, free to download at your app store, and just hit the chat option. You can send me text messages. All right, so I'm going to develop this into other topics more than I was just talking about the first hour. But for those people who were with me the first hour, you heard me play it. I'm going to play it again for the people who join us later. You know, those people who sleep late and things like that. Just rolled out of bed, still yawning, sipping on their cup of coffee, probably haven't showered yet, smell like yesterday, need to brush their teeth. Those people who just got out of bed? Okay. So, not that I'm picking on you. So, this is a lady who owns, it looks like some kind of a salon. And she has some young employees working for her. These look like to be young college age. I mean, very young, like freshman college age, something like that. And there's about 5 or so of these girls standing around. And this business owner wants to explain to these ladies how much she has to pay just in payroll taxes alone to have them. Because in case you didn't know, if you're not an employer, you don't know this. When your boss pays you, he has to pay taxes on what he pays you. And then when you get the money, taxes are deducted. Then when you spend that same money, you're taxed again. See where this is going? And that's not all of the taxes. All right. These young ladies were shocked.
So we're going to take a guess. Who can guess within the last 3 years how much I have had to pay payroll taxes to just be able to pay you guys in the last 3 years?
I'm going to say 60,000. I think 80. Instead of 100 though.
$272,000 to the U.S. government just to pay people that you will also pay your taxes on as well. And then when you go to buy something, you will also be taxed on the item that you are purchasing. You're also, and then you get paid, and then your paycheck's half of that because you're also paying tax.
There was one young lady in the background that you heard there. Why are you doing this? Well, you should know, by the way, how much everything is taxed. And I even think beyond that, let's say we have a death tax in the United States. So, let's see, money, let's say your parents made some money, which they've already paid taxes on. And then they die, and that money, as it's transferred to you through your inheritance, is taxed. And then come tax time, you got to pay a tax on that money. And then when you go to spend that money is taxed. All right. So anybody who wants to talk raising taxes and closing business loopholes is another way of raising taxes. So anyone who wants to talk raising taxes, I'm really not interested in voting for them because they don't need more money. Any level of government, they do not need more money. They have enough, especially when you consider how much money they're wasting. And especially when you consider at any level of government, from our city, county, state level, all the way up to the federal level, we're talking about a bunch of politicians who have absolutely no idea how to fix anything. But they run for office on fixing every
Hello,
thing.
My name is Carl, and I'm running for Congress in your district. I'm not an expert in anything. Nothing. Not a thing. But I sure know how to look like I know what I'm talking about, and that's why I'm electable. I'm not an expert on guns, or finance, or science. Heck, I flunked science in school 3 times. I know nothing about automobiles or engines of any kind. I know nothing about energy, gas, coal, oil, green energy, whatever that means. I've never held a gun in my life, and actually I'm kind of scared to. But if you elect me into office, I promise to pass laws regulating everything that I know nothing about. I promise to act like the expert that I never really could be, because I cannot pass the test to get a job in that field to save my life. But I can regulate it. Yes, that's what America needs today. Experts in nothing to regulate everything. After all, isn't that what government does best?
So here's what I was thinking about as I talked about that earlier this morning. And when it comes to taxation on every single level of government and how they're constantly asking for more. My thought is, instead of arguing, and I don't usually argue this anyway, liberal versus conservative and things like that. I mean, there's plenty to argue about, but I just got tired of that a long time ago. Instead, I like to just argue limited government. I mean, look, as a person, believe whatever you want to believe. I don't care. If you believe something that I think is outrageously stupid, well, you go ahead and believe it if that's what you believe. It's not my business what's in your head. But I will ask this. Could you please stop looking to government to fix everything and solve all your problems? Because they certainly don't have the answers, especially when you take a look at what a mess government has made of every little thing. If you want to fix something, really, you want to go to the private sector to fix it. And if some people will argue, then they do it for the money. Well, good. That's a great motivator, because any company that wants your business, whatever the product might be, including healthcare, whatever the product might be, in order to get your business, they have to provide a quality product at a good price with great service to back it up. Government, on the other hand, doesn't care. They don't care about quality of the product. They don't care about a good price. They don't care how much of a hassle it is to use them. They honestly don't care about any of those things. And so you're never going to get a good deal from them. I mean, and it doesn't matter what it might be. For those people who say, and I laughed at this earlier this morning too, I know some people, for example, up in Canada who have said, we have free health care. No, you don't. I know some people in the UK have said the same thing. They get taxed heavily for it. It's outrageously expensive. The quality is poor. And the availability of that health care, it's hard to get if they get it at all. And then the bureaucracy that they have to navigate, dear Lord. But these are the people who have solutions for everything. Which is why I've changed my argument over the years, and very rarely do I ever argue liberal or conservative or anything like that. Instead, I argue competency and price. You're talking about a bunch of corrupt, incompetent, naive boobs. That's who we put into government, who do not have a solution for anything. And the more they try to fix it, whatever it is, the worse it gets. And it's better handled in the private sector, where if you are dealing with a company, whatever the company might be, and again, even if it's healthcare, whatever the company might be, if you're dealing with a company and they just suck for whatever reason, you can fire them and go to a company who's going to give you a better price and a better product and et cetera, et cetera. Personally, that's how I like to argue, especially during an election year, with people who would normally completely disagree with me. Just vote smaller. Quit voting for bigger, because bigger comes with higher taxes, by the way. Bigger comes with much higher taxes and more regulation and less freedom. The decisions are taken from you along with your money. Coming up on 8:16, Wake Up
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Make your voice heard at 888-97-WOODS. This is AM 1030 K2 Radio.
Are you or someone you know experiencing a speech, language, or swallowing disorder? An ASHA-certified speech-language pathologist can help. Visit us at asha.org/public.
$8:20 is the time. 888-97-WOODS, the phone number, 888-97-WOODS. I just turned over to the ridiculously large television that they have in the studio with me, and Joe Biden's delivering his speech to the United Nations, the last speech to the United Nations he'll ever give since he's stepping down. And first off, he's just going back and forth reading off the teleprompter, and it's very difficult for him to, he's struggling to make sure he doesn't slur his words. And as he just went through, while you were listening to that news and information break, I was listening to him, which I almost gave myself a headache, but I managed to get through some of it. And as he listed off all of the problems that the world has, my thought was, well, first off, most of your problems that you just listed were created by government or governments. And some of them are even fake, created by governments. Like, the climate crisis, which is a fake crisis created by government. But there's many other conflicts and problems that we have there across the globe, which, you people at the UN created, by the way. So I certainly don't trust them to solve it. Now, speaking of solving problems, this is a website, and I never tell you who the website is. It is a liberal Wyoming website. Very liberal Wyoming website. And they don't post a whole lot, which is good because it's garbage. But I talked to you about it because I want you to hear what they have to say, these Wyoming liberals. Now, some time ago, they were talking about, this is years ago, problems with some Wyomingites not making enough money. And being hardcore leftists, their solution was, well, government needs to... No, if you're having financial problems, it's not your government's responsibility to solve them. That's your responsibility. You live in a republic. Government is not here to take care of you. Your well-being is up to you. So if you're not making enough money, go give yourself a raise. And there's ways to do that. And one example that I gave, they had talked about a woman who, at the time, this was a few years ago, who was working as a single mom, and she cleaned hotel rooms in a small Wyoming town. And so she's not making much money. She can't survive. And my answer was, well, does she know, would somebody please tell her that if she heads down to Cheyenne, Wyoming, there's that Walmart distribution center who's begging for people to work there. She needs to get herself down there. And not only will she make a lot of money just working there, but the opportunities for advancement are pretty good. And at the time that I was talking about this a few years back, the manager of that facility was listening to the program, and he called in and said, "Dear God, yes, get her here. I'll hire her. And if she's good and wants to work her way up, we have opportunities to do that." So you see, there's how you solve your financial problems. So the latest from this same liberal group, the headline for this, Wyoming's unaffordable housing drives young families and businesses away. All right, now, when it comes to real estate prices, depends on where you are in Wyoming. There are some places that are completely unaffordable, and there's other places that are actually not so bad, but in the places where the cost of living is not so bad, the job opportunities aren't as good either. So, all right. And this author writes, this is the second article in the series looking at Wyoming's housing crisis. Everything's got to be a crisis. The high cost of housing is a problem in and of itself. It means that working families spend too much of their paychecks on their mortgage and rent. But the problem doesn't stop. Out of control housing costs in Wyoming filter out other forms of harm in the community. Lack of affordable housing is stifling the economy and making it hard for working class families to establish roots, from hampering local businesses to decreasing essential services, et cetera, et cetera. Our state must address this core problem. Okay. Well, as she talks about, let me see, essential services, she goes on talking about the problem. Okay, stress and homelessness, and okay. She goes on and on and on talking about what she thinks the problem is as she writes this article, but her solution is the same thing. So government needs to actually, and it's not the only reason, but part of the reason that we have some high housing costs in Wyoming, just part of it, has to do with government. Well, even your state legislators are trying to work now on finding a solution to the property tax issue. And property taxes even affects, of course, renters, because an apartment complex, they have to pay property taxes, and among other taxes, and that gets passed on to the renters. As far as home prices go, a lot of that has to do with people moving in from out of state, and they buy a house for way more than the house was worth, which drives up property values, and that becomes a problem too, not just with the taxes, but with the values of the home. But we can name some other problems as well, but it comes down to her solution for this. So she would like to reduce property prices, not just for homes, but for people who rent, whether they're renting a home or an apartment, whatever the case is. They're looking for a way to reduce costs, and I'm all for that. But again, her solution immediately is, and so we got to get government to set up programs which will help these people. And of course, you know, when government tries to set up programs to do that, the situation ends up worse, not better. And of course, the burden winds up on the taxpayers. Now, if you're going to pay for government programs to improve the cost of housing, subsidize housing, things like that, well, where's the money going to come from? it's going to come from the taxpayers. And their idea might be, well, we'll charge the millionaires and the billionaires. There's not enough money there. You're going to have to charge everybody. Which will do what to property costs? Raise them again. You see, it's a never-ending little loop there. If you want to go ahead and lower property costs, the answer is not to start a government program to lower, because you have to pay for that government program, which means that's going to cost all of everybody out there more money, which means we pay more, which our prices just went, it doesn't work that way. So the solution, and I said the same thing when Jackson Hole's been trying to solve its problem, because people who hold the average job in Jackson, your convenience store employees, your grocery store employees, just in general, when you see employees working at retail establishment, but other such lawn care and name it, your basic blue-collar jobs. If you want housing for them in Jackson, you're not going to solve that problem by the city or the county out there, Teton County, coming up with some kind of a government program to solve the problem. It never works out that way. I've seen it tried, so many of you have as well. That's not what solves the problem. So that's why I go back to what I said at the beginning of this half hour. If you want to fix things like this, I don't care what your political point of view is. I really don't. Vote smaller government. Chet and Yoder, look at this administration and prove to me that they haven't caused our current financial mess with inflation and regulation and fees. Yeah. And they have. Coming up on some local business that we have to take care of. That's news time. After news time, update on your weather forecast. Then you and I get back into it. A nice long segment, and it is open phones. So 888-97 Woods the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
If it's happening in Wyoming, it's on Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods from K2 Radio. Join the conversation at 888-97-WOODS.
9:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. 888-97-WOODS, the phone number, 888-97-WOODS. Down in Wiggins, Colorado, RH, morning RH. He says, Glenn, government eats up most of the money it confiscates from us to pay itself when providing free help to citizens. That's true. That's why I always laugh every time I hear somebody say, like from Canada or the UK, we have free health care. No, you don't. Nobody has free health care. That does not exist. And again, Biden is still talking at the United Nations right now and trying desperately not to slur his words. His head is just going back and forth between the two teleprompters as he reads a bunch of stuff that somebody else wrote for him. I don't think he understands most of it anymore. And I mean that honestly in his condition. And I keep thinking, because I've tuned in a few times to listen to, like that last news break you just heard, I was listening to him. And what I'm hearing is a list of problems, really serious problems, that were created by everybody in that room at the United Nations. Those countries, those governments created those problems. So I have no trust that the UN, those same people, are going to solve those problems. Then there's a bunch of fake problems created by them, like climate crisis, stuff like that. And they created those fake ideas, and now they're struggling to solve those fake ideas, and I have no confidence in them whatsoever. So you see why when I talk about limited government, I want as few of these people doing with as little power as possible for those reasons. All right. Came across a website. I've heard of them before. I've read from them before. Competitive Enterprise Institute. But this one is This Week in Ridiculous Regulations. Now, that's something I have to subscribe to. Watermelon taxes and crash test dummies. What? So, the story says Competitive Enterprise Institute's home distillery court case had a good week. President Biden had a bad week. The Competitive Enterprise Institute fights, a lot, even in court, fights to get rid of a lot of regulations and bad ideas. So, Agencies issued 49 final regulations last week after the 49 previous weeks. So that's a new regulation a week that they came out with. You think Congress passes a lot of laws. Your regulators, the bureaucracy, passes even more laws. It says that's equivalent to a new regulation. Actually, when you take a look at how many regulations, see, 49 final regulations last week. So I'm sorry, my math is wrong. That's equivalent to a new regulatory or regulation every 26 minutes. With 1,654 final regulations so far in 2024, the agencies in your government are on pace to issue 3,086 final regulations this year. For comparison, there were 3,018 new final regulations in 2023, 3,168 in 2022, 3,257 in 2021. By the way, with all those new rules and regulations, I would assume, since these basically are laws, that you're keeping up with all of them, right? Oh, I'm sure you are. You know, you have to know all of it. Remember, there was a time that it was said in court, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, you're supposed to know better. You're supposed to know that you don't steal and you don't murder someone. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Today, it actually is an excuse. People have argued successfully in court, how was I supposed to know that that was illegal? People have actually argued that in court, and the judge agreed with them. It's such an obscure regulation, there's no way nobody could possibly know that that was illegal. It goes on to say agencies issued 24 proposed regulations in the Federal Register last week, 23 the previous week. With 927 proposed regulations so far in 2024, agencies are on pace to issue, at this rate, 1,729 proposed regulations this year. Regulations or laws, if you will. So for comparison, there were 2,102 proposed regulations in 2023, 2,044 in 2022, 2,094 in 2021. Agencies had published 427 notices last week after 349 notices the previous week, with 12,497 notices so far in 2024. That's on pace by the end of the year to have 23,315 notices this year. For comparison, then it goes into previous years. All right. So last week, 1,553 new pages were added to the Federal Register. Last week, your government, your federal government, added 1,553 new pages to the Federal Register. Do you see what I mean when I say this is just too big and out of control? And if you vote for anything, vote for smaller government. I don't care if you're liberal, conservative, whatever. Vote for less of this. Look for the candidates who want less of this and vote for that. The average Federal Register issued in 2024, just in 2024, has 428 new pages, with a total of 57,338 pages so far. Now, rules with a $200 million or more of economic effects on at least 1 year qualify as a major section. This replaces formerly economic significant tags of 100 million plus regulation. Getting rid of regulation saves us a lot of money. Total estimate cost for 2024 major regulations ranges from $17.82 billion to $22.87 billion, somewhere in there. So then it goes into comparison previous years. There was 2 new final regulations meeting with broader definition of significant last week. So far this year, 195 new regulations meeting the broader definition of significant. And then it goes back to comparison for previous years. Okay, so far in 2024, 397 new regulations affecting small business, on pace for 741 by the end of the year. You get the idea. This list just goes on and on. Highlights, this is good. Highlights from last week's regulations. The cranberry market order. The FTC issued new franchising regulations. Let me see. FDA. The FDA is removing Allergic Products Advisory Committee. That's good. They removed the committee. The Education Department is improving state capacity. More on the Education Department is giving out-of-state personal development grants. California vehicle inspections. Oh, that's got to be a dream. Oh, God. More regulations for big banks. Air quality. And, yeah, they do have some here dealing with crash test dummies. Yeah, crash test dummy regulations. But also taxes and regulations on watermelons, too. Yeah, I like Mike here. The ultimate Karens, that's good, Mike. Hang on, let me call this up so I can go ahead and play it after I say this. Let me see. There was one. No, it's up here somewhere. I have a Karen thing to get out and into the next. Why is it whenever I want to hear it is? I suddenly can't find it, but I can find it when I don't want it. Mike is saying the ultimate Karens, U.S. agencies. Absolutely.
The North American Karen, a wild beast that's dangerous alone but deadly in numbers. When gathered together, they form what is known as a homeowners association. This HOA peruses the gated community on the hunt for a vulnerable manager. But today, their vulnerability will be exposed. A Tyrannus homeboy sapien. The Karens freeze and huddle together in fear. Their phones on video mode, at the ready to call for help from their closest friend of the jungle, the security officeurus. But the harmless Tyrannus goes about his business, paying little attention to the Karens. But it's too late. The Karens have already been frightened. They turn and make their escape. Rarely do the Karens find themselves on the receiving end of fear. But today, they are reminded that the world is not their home. They trot home to their husbandus flaccidus to complain that their neighborhood is going to hell.
Wake up, Wyoming. Glenn Woods is live on AM 1030 K2 Radio and the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app.
8:49 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off to the icebox we go. Frank Gambino is waiting by, and I'm filling Frank's head with just useless information. Because, Frank, I mean...
That's all you got today.
Frankly, that's all I got today, yeah.
You know, I'm going to start a folder on my computer about useless stuff that you send me.
Yeah, okay, good. And then what are you going to do with that folder?
Well, it'll just be, I'm just going to mark it useless.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I have a whole, computer full of that stuff. Oh. There is an abandoned city in Turkey. It contains, so they built a neighborhood, and every house was a small castle.
Every house was a small castle.
Yes, every house looks like a really nice-looking castle. The problem is every castle looks exactly the same. That was one of their problems.
I wonder if they had an HOA.
Yeah, they probably did, but nobody lives there, so there's 500 abandoned castles.
Okay, in the same town.
And there's it's a big neighborhood. A Buddhist temple made of 1 million beer bottles in Thailand.
1 million?
That must have been some really drunk Buddhists.
Yeah. I didn't know that they must.
Okay.
All right.
Now, you've heard of the character Guy Fawkes, right? And you remember there was the Guy Fawkes mask that people were wearing during protests for a while.
Right, yeah.
Okay, he's a famous guy in history. But he's also the reason we call each other guys.
Because?
His name was Guy.
Oh.
Yeah, see?
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
Let me see. We can skip that one. It's kind of boring over here. There's a jellyfish that looks like a fried egg. And I'm looking at it right now. It does look like a fried egg.
But it is a jellyfish.
It is a jellyfish.
It would sting you and you would be hurting for days.
You might look at the ocean and think, why are there a bunch of fried eggs floating in the ocean? Don't jump in.
No. Don't jump in. No. College athletics, the scene changing some more with the Mountain West Conference. First of all, they had lost Colorado State, Boise State, Fresno State, and San Diego State, who elected to jump to the Pac-12 conference. Now reports indicate that Utah State's going to be next. Now, all those schools will start playing the Pac-12 in 2026. The Pac-12 also reportedly offered Nevada, Las Vegas to join, but they elected to remain in the Mountain West Conference. And the Air Force, who is courted by the American Athletic Conference, has elected to remain. playing in the Mountain West. Now, Utah State's been formidable in football. They won the Mountain West Conference Championship back in 2021. Their men's basketball program has been to the NCAA tournament 4 of the last 5 years. The Pac-12 has 7 schools. They'll need 1 more to make a conference. In the Mountain West, they need to find some schools to remain as a group of 5 power in college athletics. Now, in football right now, the Wyoming Cowboys will host Air Force in their Mountain West Conference opener on Saturday night. Folks are one of the worst teams in the country at 0-4 after a 44-17 loss to North Texas last week. There's been a ton of injuries on this team, that's for sure, but really all they can do now is just wipe the slate clean for non-conference play and then maybe turn out to be the team that people thought they would be, or stumble for the rest of the season. UW 6.5-point underdogs, and there'll be a 6 p.m. start from Laramie on Saturday. We'll have that for you on K2 Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. Last night in the National Football League, there were 2 games on Monday night. Buffalo defeated Miami 47-10. Former Wyoming Cowboy quarterback Josh Allen was fantastic in the first half for the Bills. He threw 4 touchdown passes, so they're now 3-0. In the other game yesterday, Washington beat Cincinnati 38-33. Casper native and former UW linebacker Logan Wilson had 9 tackles for the Bengals, and the Bengals have just woefully underperformed. They're 0-3. Major League Baseball, longtime Colorado Rockies star Charlie Blackmon will retire at the end of the season. Blackmon is one of the best players the Rockies have ever had. Played all 14 years of his career in Colorado, a 4-time All-Star, led the National League at hitting back in 2017. He's a career .292 hitter and played over 1,600 games with the Rockies in his career. That's it in sports.
That whole Western Conference thing, I can't keep up.
Either can I. And I think a lot of people, it's just making their heads spin. Who's in? Who's out? Yeah. Who's paying? Who's not paying? Some of these schools, they have to pay to leave their league, like the Mountain West. They charge them $17 million. And then the Pac-12 has got all this money in the bank, and they'll go, well, we may help you with some of that. Maybe all of it. Who knows? And then it's all about MONEY. Why?
Which we will see none of, but they will spend a lot of it.
No, we won't see any of it.
Thank you, Frank. Coming up on some local business we got to take care of. I got to roll into news time after that. National local update on the weather forecast. Oh, and I have next hour, along with open phones, updates on Wyoming fires. Some good news there. Not done with them yet, but there's some good news there. Let's wake up, Wyoming. Six the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. I got some great news from America, or for America, that I just heard. But you're not going to like the way we achieved it.
Today's show is sponsored by Squid-Flavored Donuts, bringing the flavor of the ocean to your breakfast pastry.
It's when it's the filling, like a jelly donut, but instead there's a squid in there. And if they can do that and the squid is still alive...
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave, just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave.
I just heard on the news, top of the hour, and I think it's the part of the news that you don't get to hear. And the reason why is, in my studio here, since the show's on multiple radio stations, what I hear and what you hear on your local station could be 2 different things. Well, the story was about Americans, and I've been saying for quite a while that Americans have gotten just way, way, way too fat. I mean, it's one thing if we got a little bit overweight, which for a while there I was thinking, wow, Americans have gotten a little bit overweight here. We're kind of chunky. So I include myself. I have a little extra weight that I would like to lose. I mean, I'm not horrible, but I have a little bit extra that I would like to trim off here, and I'll be able to do it, so it's okay. But there's a lot of people out there that I look at and go, wow, we have really let ourselves go. Well, a new report just released. Within the past couple of years, Americans have lost a little bit of weight. Not a lot. I was about to say not a ton, but that joke is too obvious. Not a lot, but we have trimmed down a bit. We're not as fat as we used to be. And I'm thinking, oh, well, so what prompted that? You hear where I'm going with this? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Bidenomics weight loss program is kicking in full force. Absolutely. Because as food prices go up, your ability to purchase what you really want to eat, including, we had this conversation this morning here at the studios about different snack products that are out there. For example, I was on the road just recently, and while driving across Wyoming, pulled over to a convenience store. And not only did I have to go use the little talk show host room, but on my way out, I always, when I stop by a convenience store, I always, if I use the facilities, like to pick up something, buy it, patronize them, I just think it's the right thing to do. So on the way out, I thought I'm going to grab a bottle of water. And one of the things I like chewing on as a snack as I drive, with those bags of Chex Mix, like Chex cereal. But it's just to snack on, which is one of the greatest ideas that Chex ever came up with. Because, I used to sit there and just pour a bowl of Chex and just sit there and snack on it while watching TV. And the company decided, actually, a lot of people do that. Let's just sell it by the bag as a snack. Wonderful idea. So I walked over to where they had the little bags of Chex. There's not much in a bag. $3.50. Now, I know it's convenience store prices, but still. And I walked by another area. I wasn't going to buy any, but I did walk by, those little donuts they have in a package, just like a little row of tiny donuts in a package. Yeah, that was around $2 and somewhere $3, something like that. And so I got curious and I started walking around and I thought, well, okay, let's just not look here. Next time I went to the grocery store, prices should be lower at the grocery store, right? So I go walking around looking just at little snack items. So I'm thinking, wow, holy cow, this is outrageous. Now, I hear people all the time complaining about prices at the grocery store. The Democrats, especially the Harris campaign, are trying to convince you, oh, no, inflation is down. No. Things were inflating faster. Okay, but now that rate of inflation has slowed. But we still have inflation. It still should not be growing this fast. Prices are not coming down. They're going up. And I keep hearing from people, but, oh, no, things are so much better. No, they're not. And for anyone who says that they are, let's go shopping. Don't show me a bunch of numbers and statistics. Let's go shopping. And we'll take a look at actually what is out there price-wise. There's also the sticker shock of when they say to us, hey, gasoline prices are down. Well, gasoline prices may have dropped a bit, but they're still way higher than they should have been. They're way higher. But let's get back to food here. I used to, on occasion, on my way home, if I was just feeling the urge, just because I felt the urge, there's a couple little places I would stop by just to get a little something for, well, it's your lunch, probably my dinner. It's late in the day for me because I get up so early. I didn't mind stopping by various little places, whether it's a chain restaurant or a local place, because I wasn't spending that much money on just a little something for lunch. And I hate to do this to the people who run those establishments or own those establishments, but I don't do that anymore. Because I walked in and I took a look at all I wanted was that little sandwich right there, which used to be, just a couple of bucks for that little sandwich. Now it's like, including tax, it's like $10, $12. And I had to look at it and just go, I can't keep doing that. Every single day, I'm not doing that anymore. So even I have to admit, when it comes to snack food items, little things, just just when I'm like in the middle of the day and I just want to nibble on something, I just skip it now. Because I look at the price that's being offered out there. And I hate to do that to those businesses that are trying to stay in business, but I say, I'm just not paying that. And the same thing happens going to the grocery store. You want how much for what? A gallon of milk, which I don't buy milk, but a gallon of milk is how much? A tub of butter is how much? I hear people complain about this all the time. Now, my eating habits are a lot different than a lot of you because I tend to eat on the go while I'm at work. I rarely stop for a meal. But that's me. I know a lot of other people who like to cook their meals at home, and wow, have Americans cut back. Not just on what they're cooking at home, but even what they would snack on or how many times they would eat out or something like that. So what we have here is, yes, Americans in the past couple of years have lost a little bit of weight, and that's a good thing. It's good to see everybody trimming down. I hope you're having to tighten your belt and your pants are falling off as you're walking down the street, and you're starting to eye those clothes that you haven't thrown out but you should have a long time ago, but you're thin clothes. And the answer as to why is because of, Bidenomics and inflation. That's why Americans are getting thinner. You see, it's a weight loss program. So, if you would like to lose more weight, vote Kamala Harris. Oh, trust me, by the time she gets done with us, we are going to be so thin and trim and in great shape. Oh, yeah, you're going to love the way you look. You really are. Or if you vote Trump, I can tell you this right now, you're going to get fat. So, it's your health. You decide.
My name is Carolyn. I'm a recovering Californian, and today's Southern lesson is, this is called a buggy. It's to get groceries. It's actually not a homeless U-Haul. I know. I didn't know either. And, it's Southern tradition when you're done with your buggy, to return it to the buggy corral to be with the other buggies. They actually don't belong on the boulevard or in the LA River. Buggy is not an aquatic species, and it will drown.
If it matters in Wyoming, it matters to Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Call Glenn at 888-97-WOODS and make your voice heard. AM 1030, K2 Radio.
9:21 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. All right, I got some response going here since I was talking about the Biden diet. I just heard a news story, top of the hour, that Americans have lost a little bit of weight, which is good because we have been getting enormous. And so in losing a little bit of weight, in talking to people that I know, it's just that they can't afford food. So I would say thank you, Bidenomics. And so since we have Kamala Harris ready to go, here's your choice. If you want to lose more weight and get back into those old clothes that you used to wear that you look so good in, vote Kamala Harris. If you want to get fatter and get really unhealthy, vote Trump. Okay? It's your choice. It's completely your choice. Now, Michelle in Cheyenne says, I don't mind being thin, but full-time living outside in a tent is not my thing. Which got me wondering, I could go ahead right now, buy a bunch of tents and set them up. And as prices continue to rise, especially for real estate, prices continue to rise, I could be a landlord and just rent people tents, let them sleep out there. Just a thought. Fire Pit Paul says it's getting hard to keep the humidor full. You see, not the cigars, man. The cost of cigars is going up for him. Which again, okay, now here's the thing, Paul. If you want to live longer, you got to quit smoking all those cigars. So vote Kamala Harris and you won't be able to smoke all those cigars. You won't be able to afford them. But if you want to continue smoking as much as you want, which is not healthy, vote Trump. That's all I'm saying. All right. Chet Yoder says everyone wants prices to come down, but would that mean we are in a depression? I don't believe costs are up 20% when food has risen double or more, like your Chex Mix. Well, now, here's the thing. Bringing prices down doesn't necessarily have to mean a recession or a depression. Prices can come down naturally. I mean, prices do not need to stay this high. They can go down. I know there's always an inflationary thing happening, but they can come down quite a bit. Okay, it's just a matter of if the economy is good and if businesses out there are thriving and competing with each other. So just completely a matter of how it's done. Okay, if the economy does crash, though, that doesn't necessarily mean that prices go down. Because there are times economies have crashed, but prices skyrocketed. Especially if your government keeps spending money the way it's spending money. And remember now, we are borrowing money just to pay the interest on the debt. Think about how scary that is. So at some point, the U.S. dollar has to crash. The economy has to crash. And as it does, we'll go the same way as the Weimar Republic and Zimbabwe and some other countries that tried to pay off their debt by printing more money. And they wound up with hyperinflation. And so inflation skyrocketed out of control to the point that nobody can keep up with it. Literally, people would go to work, get paid that day. They would get paid that day because they would have to get their money to the store so they could buy groceries before the prices went up too high. And literally, people were showing up with baskets full of money, literally, to buy a loaf of bread. And sometimes what they got paid, this actually happened, what people got paid would have been enough to pay for groceries, so they rushed to the grocery store, but by the time they got there, it was already too late and prices were too high to buy groceries. That happened multiple times in multiple different countries, and it will happen here in the United States. So the hyperinflation problem is a massive problem that our brilliant politicians, and I point to both political parties on this, just don't seem to understand. This spending has to stop. It really does. So, yeah, I'm really not a huge fan of the whole Bidenomics idea because part of what Biden did, and I can blame other presidents, including Republican presidents, for this, but since Biden's our current president and Harris has been with him, the amount of money that they've been borrowing, dear Lord. And that's their economic plan. Keep borrowing and spending and find ways to tax more. Blue Eyes and Douglas, how the hell do they know we're losing weight? They haven't a clue. Well, I think it's like any other poll or survey out there. It's not like they weighed all of us. Okay, but somehow or other they're getting, maybe I would think they might be, and this is a guess, Blue Eyes, go take a look at when doctors have patients, part of what a doctor does when you go to visit them is get up on the scale. Doctor writes that down. Track that across the nation. Are we getting fatter? Are we getting thinner? And I never, it's one thing when I was a kid, I noticed very few fat people ever. I hardly ever saw a fat person. As I got older, I saw more and more people getting more and more overweight. I mean, it got really bad. It got really bad as I got older. I suppose a lot of you noticed it. Today, the amount of not just overweight people, but I'm going to say extremely obese people has gotten so bad. I mean, it's frightening when I take a look at it. It's horrifying what I see out there. Chris and Cheyenne, how about the billionaires we borrowed to pay billions in foreign aid? See, how about the billions we borrowed to pay billions in foreign aid? We can start with there. Yeah, let's cut that. You're talking about cuts, Chris? Chris is in Cheyenne sending me this note. I would say that that's a good place to start, is just the amount of money in foreign aid. Next, all of the subsidies. I hate subsidies. And we start with subsidies to wind and solar and electric cars and stuff like that. End it. Stop. There's a whole lot of grant money that we put out there for all sorts of other things. End it. Stop. But then just to start with wasteful spending, just to begin with just wasteful spending, would cure a lot of the problem. But we also have to work on entitlements. And this is what politicians don't want to touch. Politicians don't want to deal with what needs to be dealt with. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. And for those people who say, I paid into that Social Security, if you did, fine. But what about those people who are getting Social Security who either partially paid in, but they're getting full Social Security, or didn't pay at all and are getting full Social Security? Those people have to be taken off the rolls altogether. Yeah, and we have to fix the Medicaid and Medicare problem. There's a lot to fix. It all comes back to what I was talking about earlier this morning, just smaller government. Coming up on 9:30, local news coming your way after local news update on the weather forecast, and you and I get back into it. 888-97 Woods, the phone number, 888-97 WOODS. Wake up, Wyoming.
Serious takes on local politics, or something like that. Tune in weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. to Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
9:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. I said I was going to get to this hour, so I want to go ahead and make sure that I do exactly that. Wrote an article this morning. It's on the Wake Up Wyoming site for you now, and you can see where there's more detail on this. But I talk about how Wyoming wildfires are mostly contained. And I say mostly. I'll go through some of the numbers with you here. But firefighters, as you know, have been working really hard. And there's been some fires that have just been way out of control. In fact, even when they got them in control, they got out of control again. A lot of that had to do with some winds we had come through the area. Now, overall, the winds have been calm for quite a while. You know, a couple of pretty gusty days, but overall, it's been calm out there. We had some showers that moved across the area that helped quite a bit. But it's mainly about containment. And then I'll get to the specific fires. So the way I noticed as I looked into how exactly do firefighters fight fires out in the prairie, up in the mountains, it's all about containment. So they go ahead of the fire, and if they can cut with machines, great. If not, they'll do it by hand. But they open up a break, and they clear out material that can burn. There. When the fire gets to that line, it won't be able to pass it. On the ground, anyway. But, of course, all these big embers are flying overhead, and that's where you'll see a line of firefighters waiting. And I've watched this in person happen. Been a few years, but I saw up in the Black Hills. I was following some firefighters that were fighting a blaze in the Black Hills, and they had cut a break down at the bottom of a hill. And they were up at the top of the hill on a road looking down, a whole line of firefighters with shovels and mattocks and axes and all sorts of things. And they're waiting for the fire to try to jump that line and embers to land where they are. And every time an ember would land, and they're up also in a wooded area, which makes it harder, but every time an ember would land, they would head over there and stomp it out real quick so it couldn't get going. If something landed where they couldn't get at it, that's what the helicopters were for, or the small planes. It's really interesting to watch their strategies and something like this. Okay, we have the fire Fish Creek incident, as they call it. That's the one that shut down Togety Pass a couple of times with a lot of smoke. That's 81% contained. So containment is the key. West Farm Springs incident, that is north of Thermopolis, about the same, 81% contained. Now, for those people around Casper, there is that poison spider fire, that area. I don't have, if they've put that out or not, I don't have a number on it. But that was just off to the west of Casper. Now, if you're below Douglas, if you're in Douglas and looking south, or if you're over in Glendo looking west, you're familiar with the Lobont fire, and right next to it, Little Bear incident. Those two fires are pretty much related. And so we are now at 90% containment on both of those. And those were burning pretty good up in the mountainous area in the Laramie Range. That's been going on for quite a while. South of Glendo was the Wall fire, and they've got that pretty well under control, too. I'm heading up north of there. House Draw fire, that was a big one between KC and Buffalo. 100% containment. That's good. Now, that doesn't mean it's done. That doesn't mean the fire's out. But it's contained, in other words, so all they got to do is just make sure it doesn't jump that containment. Because once you get a fire burning that much, that big, there's really no way to put it out. You let it burn out. Let it run out of fuel. But contain it. So that's 100% containment. Livingston Draw fire, 100% containment. That's in that same area. Let's head over to Gillette. Actually, that's between Gillette and Buffalo. Gillette's had their own problems, the Flat Rock fire and also the Constitution fire. Those two are, 95% contained and 97% contained for those. Now, some big ones were up on the Wyoming-Montana border in Campbell County. And let me see, that would be the Remington fire and the Short Draw fire. And we're both looking at 100% containment there. Again, containment is key. Now, what I'm going to do real quick, let's head over to Idaho. Holy cow. Yeah, they don't have a whole lot of luck in Idaho. I'm clicking on, there's so many fires out there. Up in mountainous areas that they can't even get to. There is so much going on, and most of it is 0% contained. They've got some weather, some rain to help them out. They're really going to need some weather to come in to help them out, for all of those fires to really be helped. And of course, as we get into wintertime, that, it's going to get cold, snow, and frost and all that kind of stuff. That's going to finally help put all those out. Now, I'm going to take a look at you also for the smoke and fire map, which I go to on a regular basis. We did have some in Wyoming, some really smoky days. Imagine what it would look like if you actually lived over in some place like Idaho right about now. Wow, imagine. Yeah, there are some places. Holy cow. So let me see. Smoke conditions. And we're doing layers of that. And okay. We're not doing bad smoke-wise at this time. We did hit some places, some days, as you know, that were really bad when it came to smoke during the course of this summer. But overall, a lot of the smoke has just dissipated, and I don't see much in our area at the time. And then a lot of that has to do with just the weather that we have right now. Because I even go by some places in Wyoming that I know are still burning. I don't see much smoke out there. But that doesn't mean there isn't a fire there. It's just not created. Like when you go by a power plant, and you know it's running, but you don't see any steam coming out of there. Okay, it's just the weather situation at the time. 9:42, Wake Up Wyoming.
Polish off that tin hat. You'll need it for this one. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Available on demand on the Wake Up Wyoming app.
I'm so happy to be here. Yeah. I'm just happy to be here. Still I know the world's on fire. The situation's dire. A lot of work and courage gonna be required, but I'm just happy to be here.
9:48 is the time off. We go to talk to Frank Gambino, and I'm filling Frank's head with just a lot of nonsense today.
Well, I got plenty of room upstairs,
okay.
All
right. So
the elevator doesn't go all the way to the top, but there is room in the attic. Yeah.
So the original name of Windows, which is on your computer.
Oh, the computer.
Yes.
Okay.
Interface Manager.
Interface Manager.
Yeah. I'm so glad they changed that.
Yeah. Windows is easier to remember.
This, I dare them, I challenge them to stop me. In the United States, if you find a bald eagle feather on the ground, you need a permit to pick it up.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that.
I'm just going to go ahead and pick it up. I mean, come get me. We'll deal with it. Yeah.
Here, I mean, the feather could have been in the wind for 400 miles.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. Okay. See, Mars is the site of Valles Marianas, one of the largest canyons in the solar system. You've seen it, that big scar across the front.
Oh, yeah, and somebody lives there, but they're only there for a certain part of the season.
Right. See, the amygdala, I think is how you pronounce it, is a brain structure responsible for automatic responses associated with fear and fear conditioning. And and other such emotions. And it is a tiny thing. It's about half the size of a pea.
Oh.
Yeah. And it does that much damage to you.
Pea-sized.
Yeah. Human beings have the same number of hair follicles as chimpanzees. Who the hell counted?
Yeah, how did they figure that out?
I would really... Okay. The budget for the movie Titanic was higher than the cost of the Titanic itself.
Well, yeah.
And I would bet most of that went just to pay the actors.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
I mean, okay. Let's see. Okay. This is something I've seen this picture before, and I really love this. This guy, dressed very 1980s. He's holding the big camcorder. Remember the kind you had on your shoulder there?
Oh, yeah.
And a telephone is on his shoulder there with a cord.
Yeah.
A big boom box. He has a computer typewriter. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Calculators, VCR, and also just a big computer itself that you would have on your desktop. And the list goes on and on. All of this is now in your pocket on your phone.
Yeah, pretty.
Yeah, there you go.
I've seen that. Remember those Texas Instrument things? We had to figure out the square root of 4?
Yes, that was a big deal at the time.
Yeah. College athletics, the scene changing again for the Mountain West Conference. They've been losing teams left and right. Reports indicate now that Utah State will be leaving to join the Pac-12 after Colorado State, Boise State, Fresno State, and San Diego State jump ship. Now, Utah State is formidable in football, or has been. They won the Mountain West Championship back in 2021. Their men's basketball program has been in the NCAA tournament for the last 5 years. So, all these schools will start play in the Pac-12 in 2026. Reportedly, the Pac-12 did offer UNLV to join, but they elected to remain in the Mountain West Conference, and the Air Force, which has been courted by the American Athletic Conference, will also remain in the Mountain West. So the Pac-12 has 7 schools. They need 8 to be a conference. And at this point, the Mountain West is going to have to find some schools because they're going to be at 7 here pretty soon. But they have time to get an 8th and maybe more. So we'll see how this is all going. It's beyond imagination sometimes of who's where and who's what and what money's being spent, and it's crazy. Over in football, the Wyoming Cowboys will host the Air Force in their Mountain West Conference opener on Saturday night at 6 p.m. at War Memorial Stadium. Cowboys, unfortunately, are one of the worst teams in the country at 0-4 after a 44-17 loss to North Texas last week. The injuries have played a big part in this, and not so fantastic play and lack of even discipline has been part of it too. All they can do now really is just wipe the slate clean from the non-conference schedule, which was forgettable, and then play your hearts out in the conference portion of your schedule and turn out to be the team that people thought you'd beat. UW 6.5-point underdogs, and that's a 6 p.m. start from Laramie on Saturday. We'll have that for you on K2 Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. From the NFL last night, there were 2 games. Buffalo drilled Miami 47-10. Former Wyoming Cowboy quarterback Josh Allen was fantastic in the first half. He threw 4 TD passes, had just 6 incompletions. He was sharp. The Bills are 3-0. The other game yesterday, Washington beat Cincinnati 38-33. Casper native and former UW linebacker Logan Wilson with 9 tackles for the Bengals from that middle linebacker spot, but the Bengals are woefully underperformed so far this season. They are 0-3. Major League Baseball, longtime Colorado Rockies star Charlie Blackmon will retire at the end of the season. Blackmon is one of the best players the Rockies have ever had. Played all 14 years of his career in Colorado. Is a 4-time All-Star. Led the National League in hitting in 2017. He's a career .292 hitter and played in over 1,600 games in his career with the Rockies.
How long do you think it's going to take Mountain West to resolve all of these issues?
Maybe another year.
Oh, okay.
I mean, who knows? There's so many irons in the fire.
Right.
You don't even know which irons are in which fire.
So whatever you think is going to happen don't worry about it. You don't know.
There could be changes immediately.
Yes.
It's almost impossible to predict, really.
All right. Thank you, Frank. Coming up on some local business, we have to take care. We're going to roll into news time after that. National local update on the weather forecast. You and I go rolling back into it tomorrow at this time, 6 to 10 o'clock. It's Wake Up Wyoming.